In the winter of 1993, Daniel Hughes moved into a run-down farmhouse on the outskirts of a small English village. The rent was cheap, almost suspiciously so, but Daniel didn't care. After losing his job and his marriage in the same month, he just wanted to be alone. The villagers weren't unfriendly, but whenever he mentioned the address, 42 Hollow Lane, their smiles would fade. The postman, an older man with trembling hands, muttered, "You'll hear them at night," before walking away without another word. Daniel assumed it was some local superstition, the kind of nonsense small towns clung to. The first night was uneventful, but the second was different. Around 2:46 a.m., he woke to the sound of footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. He reminded himself the place was old. Wood expands, pipes knock, but as he listened, the steps grew heavier, moving from one end of the ceiling to the other. When they stopped directly above his bed, Daniel lay frozen, barely breathing. In the morning, he went upstairs to investigate. The entire upper floor was empty, its air icy cold. Dust covered everything except for a single set of fresh footprints, barefoot, leading to a locked door at the end of the hall. The landlord had told him there was no key. "Some things are better left shut," he had said, with an odd half-smile. Over the next week, the house's atmosphere changed. The air smelled faintly of rot, though he could never find the source. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of his vision. Every night the footsteps returned, always stopping above his bed, sometimes followed by a faint dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. On the seventh night, he awoke to the sound of whispering. Not just one voice, several, murmuring in unison. They were speaking in a language he didn't recognize, their tones urgent, almost frantic. He sat up, heart racing, and looked toward his bedroom door. It was open. Daniel was certain he had closed and locked it before sleeping. The whispering grew louder, and from the hallway came the faint creak of that locked upstairs door. Something was coming down the stairs. His body wouldn't move. It was as if the air had thickened. Then, just outside his bedroom, he heard a wet, shuffling step, followed by a slow exhale. When he finally managed to turn on the bedside lamp, the sound stopped. The hallway was empty, yet the air was so cold, his breath came out in clouds. The next day, determined to end the madness, he called the locksmith and had the upstairs door forced open. Behind it was a small, windowless room, the walls covered in black mold. On the floor sat a rotting wooden chair, and in the corner, a pile of what looked like old clothes. But when Daniel knelt to inspect them, he realized they were not clothes. They were bones, human bones. Some still had fragments of hair attached. That night he didn't sleep. He sat in the living room with a kitchen knife in his lap, listening. At exactly 2:46 a.m., the footsteps began again. But this time, they didn't stop above his bed. They came down the stairs, slow and deliberate. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as the shadows in the doorway thickened into a shape. A tall, gaunt figure, its head tilted unnaturally to one side, empty sockets staring at him. It opened its mouth, wider than a human mouth should open, and let out a deep, rattling breath that carried the stench of decay. Then, in a voice that sounded like it came from the bottom of a well, it said, "You shouldn't have opened the door." The next morning, the postman found the front door wide open and Daniel's car still in the driveway. The police searched the house, but Daniel was gone. Only the knife remained, lying on the living room floor, bent as though gripped by something impossibly strong. The villagers still avoid 42 Hollow Lane. They say that if you stand outside in the early hours of the morning, you can hear the footsteps and the slow, heavy breath of something that should not exist.